Why you can't say no. Have you ever agreed to something, even when every part of you wanted to say no? You didn't have the time, you didn't have the energy, you didn't even want to do it. But somehow, the word yes came out anyway. Maybe you were afraid of disappointing someone. Maybe you didn't want to seem rude. Or maybe you simply didn't know how to say no. Here's something fascinating. Psychologists have found that people who struggle to say no are often not weak, selfish, or indecisive. In fact, they're usually empathetic, responsible, and deeply concerned about maintaining relationships. The problem is, when your brain constantly prioritizes other people's needs over your own, saying yes can slowly become an automatic habit, one that leads to stress, resentment, burnout, and the feeling that you're living your life for everyone except yourself. So why is saying one simple word so incredibly difficult? Why do some people set boundaries with ease, while others feel guilty the moment they try? And more importantly, can you train your brain to say no without damaging your relationships? By the end of this video, you'll understand the psychology behind people-pleasing, why your brain fears rejection more than exhaustion, and several research-backed strategies that can help you set healthy boundaries with confidence. Welcome back to the channel. Or if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm a psychologist, and today we're exploring one of the most common struggles I see in my practice, the inability to say no. We'll uncover the hidden psychology behind people-pleasing, the neuroscience of guilt and social acceptance, a real story from my practice, and practical techniques that can help you protect your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. If understanding the hidden mechanics of the human mind is something you care about, make sure you're subscribed, because every week we explore the psychology behind behavior, emotions, relationships, and the invisible forces that shape our everyday lives. Now, let's begin with a simple question. Why does your brain treat saying no as if it's something dangerous? A woman sat across from me in my office a few years ago, and she said something I will never forget. She said, "I agreed to organise my co-worker's baby shower, host Thanksgiving for 14 people, drive my neighbour to 3 doctor appointments, and lead a committee at my church. All in the same month I was already drowning at work, and I don't even like any of those people enough to sacrifice my sanity for them." I asked her the obvious question, "Why did you say yes?" And she sat there for a long moment, and finally she said, "I genuinely don't know how to say no. The words just won't come out of my mouth." If you have ever felt that exact same paralysis, agreeing to something the second it is asked of you, even as your entire body is screaming no on the inside, then what we are about to talk about today is going to feel like someone finally put language to an experience you have lived with for years. Let me tell you why I care so deeply about this particular topic. In nearly 2 decades of clinical practice, I have noticed that the inability to say no rarely shows up alone. It shows up wrapped around anxiety, around resentment, around exhaustion, around relationships that feel one-sided and unsustainable. People come into my office believing their problem is poor time management, or simply being too generous, when in reality, the deeper issue is something much older and much more protective in nature. Let's start with the foundation. Saying no is not actually a skill you are missing. It is a behavior your nervous system has learned to suppress, because somewhere along the way, it became associated with danger. I want you to really sit with that idea, because it changes everything about how we approach this. For many chronic people pleasers, this pattern was not built in adulthood. It was built in childhood, often in homes where a child's needs, preferences, or boundaries were met with anger, withdrawal of affection, guilt, or punishment. If a child learns early that saying no leads to a parent's disapproval, or worse, to emotional or physical withdrawal of love, the developing brain draws a very clear conclusion. My safety and my belonging depend on accommodating other people, even at my own expense. That conclusion, formed in a 5-year-old's nervous system, often continues operating completely unchanged well into adulthood, even when the original danger is long gone. This connects to something psychologists call the fawn response, which is less widely known than fight, flight, or freeze, but is incredibly common, especially in people who grew up in unpredictable or emotionally unsafe environments. While fight and flight prepare the body to confront or escape danger, fawning is a survival strategy built entirely around appeasement. The nervous system learns that the fastest route to safety is not resistance, but compliance. Keep the peace. Avoid conflict. Make yourself useful, agreeable, indispensable, so that you are never the target of anger or rejection. For someone whose nervous system developed this pattern early on, saying no does not simply feel uncomfortable, it can trigger a genuine threat response, the same physiological cascade you would experience facing actual danger, elevated heart rate, a tight chest, a flush of anxiety, because on some unconscious level, your body has learned that disappointing someone equals risking abandonment. Here is something fascinating that neuroscience has revealed about this exact pattern. Brain imaging studies on social rejection have shown that the anterior insular and anterior cingulate cortex, regions involved in processing both physical pain and emotional distress, become highly active when people anticipate disapproval from others. For chronic people pleasers, this anticipatory distress often kicks in before they have even said yes or no, which means the discomfort of imagining someone's disappointment can feel more unbearable than the very real cost of overcommitting yourself. Your brain, in other words, is solving for the wrong variable. It is optimizing to avoid a few uncomfortable seconds of someone else's potential displeasure, while completely ignoring the much larger, slower cost of your own chronic exhaustion, resentment, and lost sense of self. If any of this is resonating with you so far, take a second and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who might desperately need to hear it today, and drop a comment letting me know the last time you said yes to something you truly did not want to do. Because I think you will be surprised how many people in this comment section share that exact same story. Let me tell you about a client I worked with, and as always, identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Her name was Renata, 38 years old, a marketing director who came to me because she had begun having panic attacks every Sunday night before the work week began. On the surface, her life looked enviable, a successful career, a wide circle of friends, a reputation as the most reliable, helpful person anyone knew. But underneath, Renata was completely depleted. She had taken on 3 additional projects at work that were not hers to manage. She was the unofficial therapist for every friend in crisis, and she had not had an uninterrupted weekend in over a year. When I asked her what would happen if she said no to even one of these obligations, her answer revealed everything. She said, "They would think I don't care about them anymore." As we worked together, we traced this belief back to her childhood, growing up with a mother who withdrew emotionally anytime Renata expressed a need or preference of her own. Renata had learned, decades earlier, that her worth was directly tied to her usefulness to others. Over several months, we worked on something we called low-stakes boundary practice, intentionally saying no to small, manageable requests first. A colleague asking her to cover an unrelated task, a friend asking for a favour that genuinely inconvenienced her, in order to slowly teach her nervous system that disappointing someone in a minor way did not lead to abandonment. The first few times were excruciating for her, but over time, something remarkable happened. The relationships that mattered did not disappear. If anything, they deepened, because Renata was finally showing up as a real person with limits, rather than a performance of endless availability. So how do you actually begin reclaiming your ability to say no? The first step is recognizing the physical sensation of the fawn response in real time. Most people please so automatically that they never even register the moment of choice. Start paying attention to what happens in your body the instant someone makes a request, a tightening in your chest, a reflexive yes forming, before you have even consciously thought about it. That physical awareness is the first crack in the automatic pattern, the moment where conscious choice becomes possible again. The second step is creating what I call a pause buffer. Chronic people pleasers often say yes instantly because the discomfort of sitting with someone's request, even briefly, feels unbearable. Practice a simple phrase that buys you time, something like, "Let me check and get back to you." This single sentence interrupts the automatic yes, giving your nervous system enough space to actually consult what you want, rather than what feels safest in that immediate pressured moment. The third step is tolerating the discomfort of someone's disappointment without immediately fixing it. This is genuinely one of the hardest parts of this work. When you say no, and someone reacts with frustration or even mild displeasure, every instinct in your body may scream at you to over-explain, over-apologize, or reverse your decision entirely. Learning to let someone be disappointed without rushing in to manage their emotional reaction for them is one of the most powerful nervous system rewiring practices you can engage in. I do want to offer an important caution here. If your inability to say no is connected to a relationship involving ongoing manipulation, coercive control, or any form of abuse, please understand that the strategies in this video are not designed to address that level of risk. In situations involving genuine danger, boundary setting can sometimes escalate conflict in ways that require careful safety planning, and that work is best done with the guidance of a licensed therapist or a domestic violence support professional who can help you navigate it safely. There is one more layer worth mentioning because it surprises a lot of people. Many chronic people pleasers believe that constantly saying yes makes them more likable, more valued, more loved. But research on interpersonal relationships consistently shows the opposite. People with healthy, clearly communicated boundaries are generally perceived as more trustworthy and more respected, not less. Constant compliance, paradoxically, often breeds quiet resentment in others because people sense, even unconsciously, that the agreement is not genuine. Boundaries, when communicated with warmth rather than hostility, tend to deepen trust rather than damage it. Let us bring this together with a clear summary. The inability to say no is rarely about being too nice or too generous. It is usually a learned survival strategy, often rooted in childhood, where your nervous system concluded that compliance was the safest path to acceptance and belonging. This shows up today as the fawn response, an automatic, body-level reaction that can make disappointing someone feel like genuine danger. Healing this pattern starts with noticing the physical sensation of that automatic yes, creating a pause before you respond, and slowly building your tolerance for someone else's temporary disappointment, all while recognizing that real, healthy boundaries tend to deepen relationships rather than threaten them. If this video helped you understand this pattern in your own life a little more clearly today, please subscribe to the channel, because next week we are exploring why some people feel guilty, resting even when they desperately need to. And based on everything we just covered, I think you are going to find that conversation deeply connected to today's topic. Take care of yourselves this week. Practice one small no if you feel ready. And remember that your worth was never meant to be measured by how much you can give to other people. If you are navigating a relationship that feels unsafe or coercive, please reach out to a licensed mental health professional or a local support service who can help you safely. I will see you in the next one.